Being a part of the Gaucho Game Lab was one of, if not my favorite experiences in college.
I am really grateful for the Gaucho Game Lab because I have learned so many people skills through this program.
I grew so much as a leader and as a developer.
I absolutely would not have learned in any other undergraduate course.
This is a very valuable experience that you won't really find in other UCSB courses and other computer science courses in general.
It's probably been my favorite part of UCSB so far. I've had a lot of fun with it.
It's not just about game development, as fun as that can be, but it's also, really about the fundamental design principles that some other classes teach you. But this is unique because it is a very specific applied version of the design principles.
The amount of technical prowess that you would need to kind of develop, I think it can really bring someone's programming and software skills to an entirely different level.
You're making a game, so all the way from ideation and that idea of iteration and getting feedback and actually implementing that feedback.
You're making something out of the normal university standard. It's not just another assignment. It is a massive project that you're spending, the entire quarter or the entire year working on.
I have taken quite a few CS courses before, even some of the harder ones like CS 160, CS 170, those are for compilers and operating systems. But even for the complicated courses, the project is still relatively small. I can get away with just 1,000 lines.
Probably, honestly, half the lines of code I wrote in college were for 184 in the advanced courses.
These kind of smaller projects does not adequately prepare students for the industry, whereas the projects are 10,000 lines to begin with. In fact, if you're curious, C++ standard library, their source code, has a lot more lines than just 1,000.
A video game is big. It's a lot of things put together. You have to think about the sound, you have to think about the story, you have to think about the gameplay, you have to think about the gameplay features, any bugs that come into play, you have to think about fixing those.
In this video game program, we're not making anything that's crazy large, but the scale of the project was still considerably larger than what I've worked on in the past.
It really is the largest project I got the chance to be a part of in college.
So that was a really good opportunity to finally challenge myself to design and implement classes with readability and maintainability in mind.
In game development in general, there's this temporal aspect to your code, which means you need to think about how code that's run earlier impacts code that's run later, because of course the code is ran every frame of the game.
Game development has taught me how to work on long-term projects and set out short-term checkpoints to work through to get to the final result.
It made me a much better programmer. It improved my problem-solving abilities.
You have to think about this problem solving in a slightly different way that you most likely haven't thought of in other classes before.
Figuring out your work ethic, being able to take criticism and apply it to your project, knowing how to organize large-scale projects.
You get to become a better programmer just by the sheer volume of code you're writing.
Me being able to produce something of that scale was just awe-inspiring.
Another thing that I really like about this class, especially with the advanced sequence, it really runs like a company or like a studio.
This is something really unique to this game dev program. It feels less like assignments. It almost feels like I am creating demos inside a company, where I will show the demo to my peers, to my boss, and eventually to the players.
You've got coding standards, you've got pipelines and workflows and stuff like that. You've got a Slack channel. We have daily Scrum meetings where we basically talk about this is what I got done, this is what I'm gonna get done before the next meeting.
I highly recommend taking this course because it's a unique experience. It feels like building a startup, brainstorming new ideas, building a game from scratch, and eventually release the game as a real product.
The other thing that this class really teaches you is some of the core principles that you'll need and skills that you'll need as a software engineer in the industry. So this class teaches you things like, sprints and Scrum and Agile development and things like that.
I've also learned a lot of industry standard workflows. So in terms of pull request proposals and then developing a feature and then submitting a pull request and then reviewing it and merging the code with the main project.
We use a Scrum and Agile development framework with daily stand-ups and weekly retrospectives, which help me adapt quickly when I intern at Amazon because they also use the same framework.
We eventually used business standard meeting techniques like agile, meet every week, and give progress updates. And eventually, we got our game just rolling. It was so awesome.
You know, it embeds itself into your workflow, which means you take it as a class. And this also means that the goals and the milestones that it provides you are very well paced because you have tons of faculty who are there to help you out.
Instead of, going through your undergraduate career and, learning a bunch of technical skills and maybe working with people a few times and then going into the industry and being like, what is this? Why didn't they ever teach us this? You get to get this experience with like pretty minimal risk because it's not like there's money at stake or your job.
We had to learn how to make an effective elevator pitch to, say, pitch to a prospective publisher. How can you get the concept of your game across within 1 or 2 sentences?
Taught me how to look at the documentation instead of just looking at tutorials, which are also helpful, but once you get into it, the documentation is really where you want to get most of your information. And I think that's useful for a lot of software frameworks.
You get to have that industry experience while you're at the university. And I think that's a really valuable skill because, when we graduate, we're going to be able to go into the industry and actually know what's going on. So yeah, I think that's a really fantastic part of this program.
I think there's a lot of skills that you'll have to deal with and have to kind of know in order to get through these classes that'll apply for any software environment, not just game development.
I guess to put it in simpler terms, if you consider like book smart and life smart, this class is definitely more in the sense of life smart, where you get more prepared to enter the industry and tackle like real world problems than you would if it was a by the textbook kind of course. And I think that's one of the best parts of this course, or like this entire program in general.
My favorite part of being in the Gaucho Game Lab program, and I think it's also the best part, is that you get to work with like-minded people on a project that we're all passionate about.
I think it's one of the things that really makes this program unique. You get to make closer connections with those people, and I mean, you get an amazing game out of it.
It's also given me an opportunity to work both as an individual and on a team. And I think these develop kind of like the technical skills, but it also develops a lot of soft skills.
The Gaucho Game Lab's game development program not only helped me learn Unity, but also greatly boosts my team working and collaboration skills.
I have taken CS courses, and some of them do include team projects. But the team project is still on a small scale. Like the largest team I work in is like 5 people for a duration of 10 weeks. In Excel CS 156.
When you move up to the advanced class, this is where you actually work with a team of people. So then you can delegate different roles of game development to other people.
With the Game Lab program, at least the advanced sequence, we're going to be working with more people. In fact, the current project, Odyssey, has like 15 people, some programmers, some artists, some marketing people, and the duration is a lot longer.
I've gotten better at team management and leadership through, working on Odysseia. I've gotten a lot better at communicating my ideas and sort of like thinking on the spot.
I learned so much about teamwork, and even as a developer, I learned so much about contributing on a large evolving code base with multiple other contributors and working at a fast pace.
For instance, I myself worked mainly on the audio for Arcana, which was our advanced class game, while other people took the roles of, say, working on the player controller, working on the enemies, working on the UI.
You'll be working, even if you're not in game development, on teams in these large projects. And so no matter where you go, everything software related, this class will definitely bring your skills to the next level.
As a programmer, it improved my ability to technically collaborate and pair program and work with multiple other developers, which I do every day for my day job.
I've always been a solo developer, and so working as a part of a solid team was a very new experience to me, and it felt great to be a part of that team.
The advanced class is very helpful in learning how these game development teams actually work together and communicate together in producing such a large-scale project that is a video game.
With the agile development process, it really helped me develop my communication skills. It also helped me structure a better code base because other people would be reading your code and using the components that you have built.
Before this program, if someone asked me a question in front of like a group of people or asked me to come up to present in front of a class for maybe longer than 2 minutes, I would have been like in a complete panic.
There are not many opportunities for me to practice the communication. Like in other courses, I've basically just been told what to do, and then I do it, and then I be done with it.
I've done public speaking in the past, but it was also with a lot of preparation, and being spontaneous is something that I have really learned in this program, and I'm really grateful for it.
However, in the Game Lab program, it's like the opposite. I need to know what I'm doing, and I need to share that information with everybody so they also know what I am doing.
You get to collaborate with team members, and you get to parallelize and coordinate work streams with them. You get to learn agile development.
I had to learn how to communicate. I have to communicate a lot so that everybody knows what I'm doing, and I also know what other people's doing. And throughout this communication, I got better at knowing what to say, how to say, and when to say.
And especially when like everyone on the team is collaborating and participating in discussions, it's so lovely. One
of the things that is probably the strongest selling point of this program is the amount of freedom that you're given as a student when you're creating these games.
You'll find much more creativity, freedom of creativity in this class and other classes because, again, the milestones are created by you, so you get to take the exact direction that you want for your project. Sure, there's feedback from other people, but that's also part of the learning process is getting feedback and iterating, but you get to be creative with how you take that feedback and how you implement it back into your system.
My favorite part of the program, especially the advanced class, is that you really get to start from nothing. Unlike other classes in college, you get to decide what you want to work on. You get together with your team and you get to brainstorm and ideate and figure out exactly what kind of game you guys would want to play. And then through hard work and dedication, you get to take that high level vision and get to bring it to life.
You know, most classes that you take, they have a predefined curriculum, predefined milestones that they want you to get, and predefined assignments that that you need to get done.
In the typical CS assignments, there's a very specific input and output requirement. So there's really not much freedom on how I do things. This is completely different in a video game project.
What I liked most about the intro course, at least, was the freedom to make any game you wanted. So there were a couple homework assignments and tutorials at the start to make sure you knew how to implement these basic functions, and then the rest of the classes, it's just up to you to make whatever game you want. And I thought that was really cool and a chance to be creative and have fun.
I have complete freedom on what exactly do I want this game to be, and what is the player going to experience while they play the game. And this is something that I really enjoy. I really enjoy the ability to add or modify features to make the gaming experience as good as it can be.
The freedom to basically do whatever you want as long as you can put your mind to it and execute on your ideas. Anything is possible.
Being able to produce something creative. It's a nice creative outlet.
You have so much creative freedom and you really get to take any direction you want with the project.
I think the biggest takeaway is the sense of ownership, because that is the most valuable thing you can have when you're a developer in the real world.
You feel true ownership of the project, which is rare in most classes.
It's a really unique experience for college where usually you get some code from a professor and an assignment and you just have to implement it. No, you get to figure out what you want to build, and you get to figure out how to build it, and you get to do it as a team.
Really, anything that your mind can imagine, you can make come true. And I think that's a very powerful thing that a lot of courses here at UCSB don't actually offer.
I think the amount of ownership you get to take in the class is really unlike anything else in college. This is your vision, and the sense of ownership you get over it is really incredible.
Because again, you're owning this entire project. You get to build this entire system from scratch, and you really get to use all these skills that you've learned to create something really cool.
It's definitely not an easy series to begin. However, I think the courses are rewarding, and the rewards vastly outweigh the cost.
Making games is hard. It requires a lot of time and effort to be put in, from designing the game to actually coding the game, making the assets, putting the music, and finally marketing and publishing it. It takes a lot of determination to be able to go through that whole process.
You start working on a feature or like a gameplay idea, and you just come to realize that like, hey, this isn't actually fun. So you have to scrap that and come up with new stuff.
It is an intense class. You do have to put in a lot of work and effort, but it's so worth it. It is absolutely worth it.
I think ultimately it is worth it. It is worth to see people had fun and enjoy a product that you worked on from start to finish.
It won't be easy, but being able to put that hard work into it to come out with something that I could be proud of was worth it. Was so worth it.
You spend summer brainstorming and meeting the team and stuff like that, and then as you start brainstorming how to expand on the idea and actually building it out and play testing and talking about it like in every single lecture, that's when it really dawns on you that like, okay, this idea is really coming to life. And it's such an amazing feeling, honestly.
Game development is basically this set of small programming challenges that all build up to make a really cool final result.
So like, for example, in my other CS classes, you do all of the lab assignments and then you take an exam and then that's your grade. With this, the thing that you make, you can continue showing people what you made months or years after you made it, which I think is really cool.
You get to see the real world applications of all the skills that you've learned maybe in all of your other classes.
Readability, maintainability. These properties, we don't care about them in regular assignments, whereas the project is likely abandoned right after it passes every test case.
You learn these data structures, maybe take an operating systems class that deals with large systems, and it's just fun to see how all those concepts that you learned in those classes actually do apply to something that's, more meaningful to you.
For the game dev program, the code I wrote will have everlasting impacts, like eventually some actual human player will play the game, which do rely on the code that I wrote to function correctly.
So you go through all of the stages of development, and if you show it to like family members or friends, they get to see the entire process of making that game, and I think that that's really cool because you get to bring like people along for the ride. Being
able to see people figure out the controls and mechanics of my game, the game that I myself made, there's something extremely gratifying about that. Gratifying and satisfying.
I get to show off to my friends about the stuff that I'm working on. So like, I'll be like, hey, do you want to see this level that I've made? Or do you want to see the enemies that are being developed by the enemy leads? And then my friends will like come over and take a look and they'll get really excited and be like, oh my gosh, Lizzie, that's so cool.
It just put a big smile on my face to see people having fun with something that I made.
It's a really nice feeling. It's very validating.
Even if you're not interested in game development as a career, I think 184 has a lot of benefits. I'm not a game developer. And honestly, the things I learned at 184 about teamwork, collaboration, help me the most in my day-to-day at Snap.
If you're a student that's kind of on the fence about whether or not you should take this class, I say absolutely go for it.
If you're not going to go into game development as a career path, I still think that this class provides a lot of value for you.
It's a really fun class. You get to make something that you can then like put in your portfolio or show your, friends and family and like have something to show for this class other than a grade.
The end result of that class is a finished project that you can just put on your resume. And as I've been interviewing for jobs, people have really liked to hear about my interest in game development.
The Gaucho Game Lab helped me solidify my decision in pursuing game development and computer graphics as a career. It also helped me develop my overall game dev skills, not just software engineering, but also project planning and time management.
As someone who wants to enter the games industry, I feel like the game dev program here has provided me with a lot of unique opportunities to explore game development.
184 teaches you how to break down large and honestly sometimes insurmountable seeming tasks into doable chunks.
In the beginner class, it's basically a solo mission. You are doing everything yourself when it comes to programming, putting all the assets together. Doesn't mean that you can't collaborate with other students. It's just that the responsibility of programming the game falls onto you.
This class is really unique because you are the only person who's determining your exact goals and milestones. Of course, there's the goal of making a game in the class, but the step to that overall goal is completely determined by you.
The 184 intro course will give you kind of like experience working with very large code bases, as well as kind of managing your time and just growing your technical skills and getting more familiar with programming in general.
Kind of refines your skills as a programmer because you're working on a pretty large scale project all on your own, and you're doing every single system all on your own.
You are tasked to provide criticism and test your peers' games, which I think is very fun and interesting.
The class puts you in groups, and so even though you're all working individually, you still get to give feedback on your group members.
You get to see, like, okay, how did this person do this part of their game? How did this person do that?
And so it's really fun to watch all of their projects evolve alongside yours and see how their game becomes refined with all the different feedback that they get.
I think it's very valuable that the beginner class allows you to learn from each other because you have interplay between developer and tester.
The class has really helped me focus my efforts and help me put my mind to what I want to do. And I think this is something that's extremely valuable, regardless of whether or not you actually want to enter game development.
There's only one other class that I know of that actually does this, and it's CS 154. But the differences between these is that 154 puts you in a group, whereas 184, you're working individually on your own project. This means that you really get to learn that design flow and the specific workflow that you need for industry in a way where it's completely self-paced. You're not worrying about how other people are doing on the project.
This is your project and you get to become the master of your domain.
You own the entire project in 184, right? And so you understand every single code that's written, hopefully.
You know every line of code, you know every error.
It's just a much better learning experience, and it's much more self-paced, and you really get to learn it at a deeper level.
It's really a great feeling, and it really teaches you how to take responsibility for a large project.
So if you're interested in game development, even just slightly, you should most certainly take 184. It's going to give you a head start on what actual game development feels like, and it's going to better prepare you for the industry.
If you're interested in taking the course, I would say do it. But first, I would definitely make sure you have a baseline understanding of programming, ideally in an object-oriented language.
I strongly recommend taking courses on algorithms and object-oriented programming.
If you don't really know how to code, it's going to be very tough at the start because it's a fast-paced class. You really hit the ground running.
They're not really going to handhold you for how to use C#. So it's really good to have a foundation in something like that before you enter the intro class.
Having those basics will help you ramp up really quickly because you're gonna have to learn a lot of stuff really fast, but it's worth it.
I highly recommend you to at least learn some sort of programming language. It could be C, C++, Java, even Python. Much of the programming concepts are the same. So get familiar with at least one programming language.
I took a lot of computer science classes going over the basics of programming in C++, and that helps me a lot in the C# scripting in Unity.
If you're trying to prepare for this class, I'd say one of the most important things is just understanding, the fundamentals of data structures.
At UCSB, there's quite a few CS courses that help with general programming, but I personally think that's not necessarily enough.
Of course, you'll be using them all the time. They show up all the time. Even if you think a problem is, straightforward, there's often a much nicer way and maybe more optimized way of doing it if you know a particular data structure. So it's just very helpful to get, a high-performant game.
And I encourage you to take kind of the project-based courses like 148 and 156 because those really kind of are very related to game development, working on a project and stuff. And so that'll really help.
For the game dev sequence, in terms of software skills, I do think design patterns are the most important thing to brush up upon. You are going to be working on a very large project, and not having spaghetti code is going to help you increase your scope much faster.
Learning a little bit of basic linear algebra, knowing how vectors work, trig functions. It's a very geometric kind of thing that you're working on, so just having all of those ideas in your head will help you a lot in game development.
A great exercise I would recommend is to recreate game mechanics from your favorite games.
You should know how to use GitHub for version control, GitHub, Git, and just any version control, because you want to make sure that you can back up your game, and you don't want to be like me, who lost the source code to his own game.
I wouldn't say you need to be an expert in Unity, but if you have the time, I'd download the editor and I would run through some tutorials over a weekend, just so you're comfortable and not opening something completely new on the first day of class.
Figure out your limits in terms of workload, because this class, it has a very heavy workload, and if you take it alongside other classes with very heavy workloads, you might not make a game that you could be completely proud of.
All of my friends know that these have been my favorite classes that I've taken so far.
This has really helped me kind of like formalize my learning and focus on the skills that I really want to grow and the skills necessary to become a better game developer and designer.
I really loved being a part of the Gaucho Game Lab. I loved getting to work on Arcana. It was a really wholly unique experience, and one that I probably am not even going to get to replicate in my day job out of college. And I wouldn't trade it for anything, and I hope you give it a shot.
It's absolutely fantastic.
Thanks for listening, and go make some games.
So what are you waiting for? Come join us at the UCSB Gaucho Game Lab.